Good morning, brethren. I'm wondering if any of you have ever been asked whether you're a native of Cedar. Well, I'm going to tell you what a native of Cedar is. A native of Cedar is someone who was born here, whose father was born here, whose grandfather was born here, whose great-grandfather was born here, and whose great-great-grandfather was one of the original pioneers that Brigham Young sent to settle the area in the mid-1850s. I am a native of Cedar. My father and mother were Clyde and LaRue Higbee. In the home, we celebrated family a lot, particularly in my mother's final years. She would constantly remind us that family is what it's all about. Beyond that, our parents emphasized the importance of education in our home. My mission literally changed my life. I was a naive little southern Utah boy that had never been east of Highway 89. And the experience, as I say, literally changed my life. It is there that the spiritual foundation was built, upon which I rely on yet today. Upon returning home, I transferred to BYU, where I met Carolyn. We were married. I had been accepted at the University of Chicago Law School. At that time, the law school would assign each incoming student a faculty advisor to assist and consult with. I was assigned a young law professor by the name of Dallin Oaks. And the Oaks family turned out to be such a blessing and an asset to us over the next 3 years. Upon graduation, I chose to seek my fortunes in the corporate world rather than in private practice. The company that I went with was rapidly growing and eventually became one of the Fortune 500 companies, and more importantly to me, the darling of Wall Street in the decade of the 90s. I was involved with mergers and acquisitions and corporate finance. The nature of that work meant that I spent an awful lot of time over the years on Wall Street. We had experienced firsthand the contribution that senior couples make. We were called to the New York Rochester mission. We returned home, took a couple of years to get reacquainted with our family, meet those grandkids that had been born in the meantime, and left this time for Louisiana, Baton Rouge. Here we were called to serve in a little branch out in the middle of the swamp about an hour west of Baton Rouge. We repeated the pattern. We returned home for a couple of years, got reacquainted with the kids, met the grandkids that had been born in the meantime, and left again. This time we were called to the New York North mission. Each mission was very different because the people we dealt with were very different. But eternal friendships were made. We still are in contact with people we met and worked with and taught over 20 years ago. I found more personal satisfaction in my missionary service than I ever experienced in my professional life. I've been preoccupied with something President McKay said many years ago. I urge priesthood leaders everywhere, before they enter eternity, to leave their testimonies for their children, their grandchildren, and their posterity. I put together a book entitled David and Carolyn Higbee Family Missionary Journal. Each of the children contributed a chapter on their own missions in this book, and And then, of course, we have information on all of our missions. I also included listings of all the missions served by members of our direct line beginning in 1832. One of my thoughts was that it might be interesting for our posterity who serve missions to know where predecessors had served, and on the chance that they might be going the same place, and have that by way of background. And interestingly, there's already been a couple of overlaps. On our third mission, we served in the same area where my great-great-grandfather had served over 150 years ago. And more recently, we had a grandson return from Uruguay a little over a year ago who met people in two different locations who remembered our daughter who had served in the Uruguay Brazilian mission over 30 years ago. If we had the ability to speak to future generations of our family, we would bear testimony that full-time missionary service is the surest form of service available to young men and young women who want to come to know the Master. It is our prayer that our posterity may use this record to increase their faith in the restored gospel and in missionary work, and that faith will lead them to a resolve to serve a mission. And then I put together another book. I chose to call this In the Language of the Scriptures. And this is 650 pages of notes I took over 35 or 40 years of studying the Scriptures. And if some of you wonder what retirees do, we write another book. This book is entitled Your Legacy of Faith, and it's addressed to my grandchildren. I say it's dedicated to my grandchildren, but what I really had in mind is my posterity that I will never know. The histories in this volume will give you a special personal resonance because they are the stories of your ancestors. But most importantly, you will find powerful witnesses of the life and mission of Jesus Christ and the truthfulness of the restored gospel. For this reason alone, their stories need to be told and retold. As you reflect on these histories of 4 generations of your family, beginning with those who initially joined the church in the early 1800s, you will come to understand and appreciate the price that has been paid for your inheritance. At a minimum, it would seem your debt of gratitude would compel you to make the effort to honestly study and prayerfully consider the faith of your fathers. You know, there's going to be something in there that's going to touch a member of the future generation that's going to make a difference in their life. I bought into the whole enchilada. I don't know of any other way to develop many godlike qualities other than through our experience and training as husbands and fathers. You know, my favorite place is where my family is. Sports is my hobby. I'm one of those who was a jack of all trades and master of none. But I've always enjoyed sports. I'm kind of glad to get tonight out of the way because we're having our family fantasy draft on Saturday and I need to prepare. Come let us anew.